I can hear my brother listening to Baby by Justin Bieber and Ludacris. Hi guys, my name's Veronica and today I'm going to be wrapping up 2016. Is today January 19th? It sure is. It is 19 days into 2017 and I am just now filming a video wrapping up 2016. If that doesn't sum up my 2016, I don't know what does. The reason I'm doing it this way is because this year I knew I wasn't going to have a lot of time to read, plus even way back in January of 2016, I wasn't feeling motivation to read, and as the year went on, that motivation got less and less and less to the point that I wasn't reading at all. I had set a goal of 30 books. I think I made it to 24, as well as some DNFs along the way. So I didn't read very much this year, especially compared to my average of 50 books in the past years. So that's why I'm doing this video a little bit differently. The first book that I read in January is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I read this for school and I'm so glad that I had to because I've wanted to read it for years and years and years. I literally bought this copy when I was in 6th grade and I've just put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off. And so I'm glad I was made to read it because this is fantastic. Like, Jane Austen was so ahead of her time. It was great. I loved it and I will definitely be reading this book again. Then I read Cemetery Girl by David Bell. This book I had high hopes for, but it just flopped. I felt like nothing was happening. There was unnecessary drama unrelated to the kidnapping. I never really connected to any of the characters. They did a lot of irrational things and I just didn't enjoy it. Then to make up for that terrible read, I read Just One Day by Gail Forman and I loved it! Really, really related to it. That's the main thing here, is I went through a situation extremely similar to this and so many of the things that the main character said, I was like, are you me? You are me! Like I connected so much and it was so enjoyable. I made like 4 of my friends read it. They all read it, all loved it. I tabbed it. I never consciously start tabbing. Like I never go into a book and I'm like, I'm gonna make tabs in this book. This one I just had to because I loved everything that was said. To start off February, I read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I expected a lot from this book. Like way back in the 6th grade whenever I read Twilight, Bella goes on and on about Wuthering Heights and I was like, this is going to be such a good book. And I read it and I was like, oh. Like that must be where Stephenie Meyer got her ideas for the type of relationship that Bella and Edward would have. As much as the Twilight series holds a sentimental place in my heart, I know that the relationship is absolute rubbish, and so is the relationship in Wuthering Heights. What are you people talking about? Did I miss something? If I missed something, like, clue me in. But the whole time I'm like, what about Heathcliff is in any way attractive? So I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars, 3 for an overall good book, 2 for I hated the relationship and I couldn't connect to the characters. Then I read Just One Year by Gail Forman, which is the sequel to Just One Day. This one is from the opposite point of view. The first book is from the girl's point of view, this one is from the guy's point of view. I didn't enjoy this one as much. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, still an excellent rating, but since this was the guy, I could not connect. I didn't have the same connection as I did in the first book. Then I read Hard Times by Charles Dickens. This is the 3rd book on this list that I read for school. It was actually a highly enjoyable book. I gave it 3 stars because it just wasn't like the best book I'd ever read, but it's generally enjoyable and like you should probably pick it up and read it. It talks a lot about how much fact and memorization plays into our life and our education and how much like creativity and imagination play into it. The final book I read in February was Love That Dog by Sharon Creech. This book was like 80 pages maybe and it had like 2-inch margins and it was like really big writing. It's written for like 2nd or 3rd graders probably. It took me about 30 minutes to read. But it was really good. So the first book that I read in March was The Slippery Slope by Lemony Snicket. This is the 10th book in the series of unfortunate events. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. I gave it 5 stars because that play is so great. It's so silly and just like, it's just goofy, but it's funny. And I really love Oscar Wilde's writing style. I really like Oscar Wilde. Then I read The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I gave it 3 stars apparently, but I don't really know why. I shouldn't have. That's more of a 2-star book because I was asleep for most of it. I sat down and read almost all of it in one sitting because I forced myself, man. Like, sometimes I think I was literally holding my eyelids open. It was very boring. It talks about white people invading Africa, and I think at some point in time, like, I got something out of it. Now that I say that, I think that is what I got out of the book, was that deep in our hearts, people have darkness. There's a lot of darkness in our hearts. Deep down, a lot of us have that somewhere in us. Which is why I think we have to fight to be good people. I think it's harder to be a good person than it is to be a bad person. Then to start off April, I read Killing Reagan by Bill O'Reilly. Disclaimer, I don't like Bill O'Reilly. I don't agree with him politically. I don't watch his show because I know that I don't agree with him politically, and so therefore I don't want to give him my attention. But I did buy the book because this is history, and I love history, and despite who Bill is as a person, this book is incredible. It was incredibly accurate. He most definitely did very thorough research. The next book I read was Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I definitely butchered that. He is an African author, and we read this book in class. I was actually supposed to read it before Heart of Darkness, but put it off. But then I did finish it, way after we took the test, but I was determined, so I finished it. But we read both because they were both about colonization in Africa. I ended up giving it 3 stars because it was really informative. It was a good look into the African culture. It shows how the culture in Africa was a lot different than the culture in Europe, and how when the Europeans came in, how that drastically changed them and really upset their ways of life. Then I read Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. Another really interesting book. A lot of these books just made me think a lot, which is the point of reading books for school, but they don't always make me think. This one did as well because it's another one of those, how quickly do people go bad? Because we are messed up people when it comes down to it. How quickly do we turn on each other? To start May off with just a bang, I went through a breakup in late April, and it like messed me up, and I was in this weird place in my life where I was like, none of this makes sense. I don't know what I'm doing, because I was graduating. I'd just been through a breakup. Like, everything weird was happening, and I'd said for years, I mean years and years and years, that I would not read Perks of Being a Wallflower until I felt like I needed it. And I knew that a day would come when I felt like I needed it. And it hit me like 2 weeks before graduation. I was like, I need this. I need it right now. So I read Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I don't know if you'll be able to see. I highlighted a lot throughout this book. I do not care to write in books. It doesn't bother me one bit. I needed it. And it provided. Then I read 2 Flannery O'Connor short stories. Good Country People and A Good Man Is Hard to Find. Both were very strange, took very weird turns. I guess that's her style. I'm definitely going to read some more Flannery O'Connor. Just do it. They're freaking hilarious. They're weird. Then for one of my most favorite books of the year was Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jeffrey Dahmer. Oh, Jay. Okay, Illuminae by Amy Kristoff. Still wrong. Okay. Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This book was fantastic. I did not think I was going to like it. It's sci-fi, it's set in space, and it's told in like documents and transcripts and stuff, and I was like, all of that I do not like, so I will not like this. What was I thinking? I loved it. Loved it. Loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. Woo! If you hear that, I am so sorry. I don't even know what's happening. My brother is doing God knows what. I read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I want to actually discuss this for a second. I'm trying to go really fast, so I'm going to try to cut back, but I won't because I talk a lot. I've defended this book for a long time. I recently talked to Sylvia, and I expressed my point of view, and she expressed hers, and I realized that I was not necessarily wrong in what I was thinking, but I was not right either. So I have since deducted 1.5 stars. I moved it down to 3.5 stars as opposed to the original 5. because I do see the problems that people have with this book. I didn't have problems with them, but I can understand why other people do. Something that truly did make me uncomfortable throughout the book was that life is not worth living as a disabled person. You know, Will is so insistent upon killing himself because he's now disabled. I didn't see it as because he's disabled, but because he had lost so much in his life. I mean, if you lost your fiance to your best friend, you lost your job, you had to move back in with your parents, like everything's going downhill, that's not a reason to kill yourself. But, I mean, it's reasonable that that would make somebody depressed. But I do understand that seeing as this is the only major book about disability, it's not okay that the only major book has a negative outlook. If there were like a ton of other books with positive outlooks, it would counteract it and it might be okay. I also understand how some people saw that Will was only there to inspire Louisa to live her life. But the way I saw it was more that he was a person who wanted to kill himself. She wanted to stop him, and through trying to make him want to live, she made herself want to live. And he inspired her too. I didn't see it as it being her disability that inspired him. I see Will inspiring Louisa, not Will's disability inspiring Louisa. But I do understand how other people see that differently, how they perceive that differently, and that's a-okay. I read The Rescue by Nicholas Sparks. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars, which seems kind of generous now. It may be more of like a 3.5. Good, not his best, definitely not his worst. It was a good one. It was different. It was a lot different than a lot of his books. A different kind of romance. A romance that had a lot more of a build-up. It wasn't just insta-love like some of his novels. This one actually had a basis and a foundation, and we actually got to watch the romance build. Then I read The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Amber Shares. I have never read this before, believe it or not, and I don't know why. This was so fantastic. I thought it was going to be really cheesy and like really like middle schoolish, but it wasn't. I really liked it, really related to it, and I think I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then immediately afterwards, I read the second Summer of the Sisterhood. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't love it as much, but I still really liked it. Then I read The Distance Between Us by Cassie West. Liked this one. It was cheesy. It was definitely like a contemporary young adult romance. It was by far not like quality writing or romance or anything, but it was enjoyable. Then one of the books from my DNF list last year made it to the red list this year, and that is Horns by Joe Hill. I only put this down last year because I didn't have time for it, and Halloween had passed, and I was like, whatever, I'll come back to it. And when I said I'd come back to it, I really planned to, and I did. This one took me quite a while to read. At this point, I was in my no motivation to read mindset, but it was weird. This is probably one of the weirdest books I have ever read. Read it. Or don't. It's weird. It's really weird. I still don't know if I understand what happened in it. The last book I read in 2016 is Labor Day by Joyce Maynard. If you watched my Try a Chapter book tag, then you will see that this is the book I picked, and I did finish it, and I did really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. I also saw the movie for this book a few years ago. The movie was better, I think. This had a lot more in it, but I think I liked what the movie focused on. Well, I don't know. I think they were both pretty good in their own respects, but they were different. So that is all for my 2016. I know that this video was much longer than a favorites video would have been, but seeing as I didn't do any wrap-ups throughout the year, or maybe only a few, I thought I'd just fill you guys in. So thank you so much for sticking with me. If you watched to the end, you are my queen, my king, my whatever you want to be. You are royalty to me. Thank you so much. I will see you guys in my next video. I love you. Bye.